Bienvenidos al club. ¿Qué tal, NBAdictos? Bienvenidos a una nueva entrega. Un nuevo capítulo de vuestro podcast favorito, NBA. Ya sabéis que además de los programas habituales, además del Desayuno NBAndo, nos gusta de vez en cuando traer la opinión de gente del otro lado del charco, de gente que lo vive de cerca. Y si puede ser gente que sabe mucho y mucho más que nosotros, mejor que mejor. Hoy tendremos con nosotros ni más ni menos que a Howard Beck. Ya sabéis, entrevista en inglés, luego la traduciremos, la doblaremos y la publicaremos. Aquí comienza el capítulo 673 de NBAdictos. Mr. Howard Beck, welcome. Pleased to meet you, and thank you for coming to our pod.
Thank you for having me, Manu. Appreciate it.
It's such an honor. It's another name that I check from my list. I'll ask you later for the Zach Lowe's number. So I can't remember.
that is classified information. That is highly privileged information. I'm not sure I'm allowed to give that out.
Howard, you are now in the Ringer. We can read you there. We can listen you and see you in the real ones on platforms around. But you have a long trajectory. I'm not calling you old. I think that we are more or less the same age. But you were in Sports Illustrated. You were in the Bleacher Report. How do you see all this journey along with the NBA and covering the NBA? And in which place are you now?
Yeah, so this is my 29th season somehow covering the NBA. That journey started in 1997 when I was hired by the Los Angeles Daily News to cover the Lakers, and I covered the entire Shaq and Kobe era, all three championships, and left there in 2004 to go to the New York Times, where I covered the Knicks for 9 years. And then, as you mentioned, after the Times, it was Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, now the Ringer. Yeah, I mean, the media industry has changed dramatically in the time that I've been doing this. The NBA landscape has changed dramatically in the time that I've been doing this. I think that to the extent that, you know, we're all just trying to figure out where the media landscape is evolving to. You're just adapting as you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I started out as strictly a newspaper reporter, a writer. I was not doing radio. I was not doing podcasts because podcasts did not exist. I had no aspirations to be on TV. I was not a broadcaster. I was strictly a writer, and that's all I ever wanted to do, really. But you know, we've had such a explosion of different kinds of media and such a rapid evolution in media in the last 20 years in particular, in the internet era and then the social media era. Within that, you just keep trying to find ways to expand your skill set, right? Just like the NBA players that we talk about all the time, right? Like if you got a weak left hand, work on your left. If your range is only out to 18 feet, you in today's NBA, you better extend it out to the 3-point line. So you're just trying to add skill sets as you go. And for me, it was becoming, comfortable as a podcaster, becoming more comfortable on camera to do videos that we did a ton of when I was at Bleacher Report. And then all of that prepared me for, when the opportunity came to join the Ringer, where podcasts are really, a major backbone of our operation. If I hadn't spent years and years doing the things that I was doing, especially at Bleacher Report, learning how to be a podcaster and learning how to be on camera and be semi-presentable, then I wouldn't have been prepared for this. So yeah, I mean, it's like I say, both the NBA And the way we cover the NBA has evolved dramatically in the time I've been doing this, and I'm fortunate to still be doing it all these years later.
You write and you do podcasts. Where are you more comfortable? Because I guess that when you write an article, it has a lot of work behind, and maybe nowadays it doesn't have the impact that it used to have. And meanwhile, the podcast is more something immediate, and in 2 days we have to do another one, and
Yeah.
and it's like more I know how to say it. It lasts less.
Yes, more disposable, maybe, or
Mhm.
if I'm going to use a fancy word in English, ephemeral. It goes away
That's
quickly.
what that was the word I was looking
Ephemeral.
for. Yeah.
Ephemeral's a great word. Um, so yeah, it's a great question because I always aspired when I was younger in this business. Sports Illustrated at the time was like the mountaintop. That was the for in the U.S. there was no higher form of sports writing than Sports Illustrated. And obviously, there were great sports sections in the New York Times and the LA Times and the Boston Globe, Chicago Tribune, all kinds of places where you could go and write really great in-depth stories. But Sports Illustrated was really the pinnacle for sports writing in the US. And those are stories that last the test of time, right? Those are in-depth features and maybe trend stories that they're longer, they're really richly reported. And whether you read them the day they came out or weeks later or months later or years
Mhm.
later, they still mattered, right? They were not ephemeral in any way. Um, and I think that was kind of where my head was at, right? Was trying to do the most interesting, the most in-depth reporting and writing things that would stand the test of time. But I think, look, sports is ephemeral because especially like think of the NBA 82 game season or in Major League Baseball in the US 162 games, which I can't even fathom covering. It's way too many games. Um, every game comes and goes. And then, the cumulative effect of that is the season. And you say, well, the season meant this for this team or for this league at this time. But, every performance, every individual performance and team performance, every game goes away and is replaced by the next one the next day
Mhm.
or a couple days later. And so, to an extent, because we live in an age of sports talk, right? Sports talk radio, sports podcasts, debate shows on ESPN and other networks. A lot of what we do is ephemeral. It is just kind of here's today's debate. That debate may be irrelevant by tomorrow, or it's going to
Yeah.
have evolved by tomorrow. It's going to have changed. We're going to have, something else is going to have happened, and that's fine.
Tomorrow it
Like
can
that.
be yesterday's newspaper.
Yes. Um, so I just think that we react in real time to what's going on, and that is part of sports media today, and that's fine. It's equally as valid as the you know deep feature reporting that you spend 3 months on, or an investigative report that you might spend 3 or 6 months on. Those things are important too. There's room for all of it. I enjoy getting to do everything, right? There are stories that I work on for weeks, sometimes for months. There are stories that are, oh, Nico Harrison got fired. We need a piece that just kind of like explains, puts this in context. Give us something immediately. Um, I think it's important as journalists to be able to do all of that, to be able to check every box. And for me, like all of them are satisfying in different ways. I will say writing is difficult. And all these years that I've been doing this, over 30 years in the business, 29 on the MBA, but I've been in the business for longer than that. Writing, it's almost like it never gets easier. And
Mhm.
I stress out about and um, have to overthink the writing part much more than if it's just like, oh, let's plug in the microphone and let's do a podcast. I'm going to do research for that podcast, obviously, and I'm going to have all my notes and everything else. So I'm going to make sure that I'm prepared. But it's not the same talking off the top of your head and not worrying about my word choice or my grammar or
Yeah.
whether this is flowing well. I that is easier That
And
is
you can do
fundamentally easier than writing.
you can do a mistake and correct on the moment, and nothing happens. It's not
Yeah.
written there, and
Yeah, once it's on the website or when and back in the day when it was in print in a newspaper or magazine, it's permanent. It's there
yeah.
and you can't change it anymore. And so you really do take great go to great lengths to make sure it's right and you've got editors and anyway, writing is harder.
Mhm.
Broadcasting I'm not saying is easy, but I like having this balance where sometimes I am doing this painstaking process of getting all my thoughts down on the screen, writing something out, trying to make it as eloquent as possible, as thoughtful as possible, as complete as possible. And there are times where I'm like, I'm glad I don't have to do that today. I'm glad that today all I have to do is put together some notes, find some stats, and have a conversation for 30 minutes or an hour, on the podcast.
Mhm. I can say that I enjoy you in both ways. I
Mm.
like to
Thank
read
you.
you in the Ringer, and I really enjoy the real ones. And also when you go with Zach Lowe, it's very very fun, and I learn a lot in both ways from you. How is all the NBA media this season started the new television landscape with
Yeah.
Amazon Prime there, with all the new landscape. Here in Spain, we had the same channel with the NBA for 30 years, and now it changed.
Yeah.
Here, it was for me, and there is people that say it other way around, but for me, it's for worst because the production here is minimum. There are not stages. The people working there are not in on camera, and for me, it's for worst. How is there in the US? Because I think from the League Pass, it seems the other way around. That Amazon Prime came with a huge inversion, a lot of production. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's this is I think a kind of a difficult time for NBA fans in general. We had for 20 years or whatever, you knew where to find everything more or less, right? There was your local channels, your local, regional sports networks for your team that's in your city. If you're in an NBA city, League Pass, where pretty much everything is on, and then everything else was either ESPN/ABC or Turner, which was TNT inside the
Mhm.
NBA. And we haven't had any major change to that menu of options for a very long time. And I just know for me, and granted, I'm old, harder for me to adapt, but on nights when I'm watching a game on Amazon Prime or on the Peacock app on my TV, um, if I'm watching that game and suddenly I see like, oh, there's this other game that's coming down to the wire. This is in the last 2 minutes. It's a 3-point game. I want to switch over. Normally, I would just punch that channel into my remote control and boom, I just flip over. But if I'm on streaming, I got to get out of streaming, go back to I have satellite TV, direct TV. I've got to switch back to direct TV, then find that channel. And I can't flip back and forth easily. I can't just hit the last channel button to
Mhm.
flip between Prime and, whatever, ESPN or Prime and, the
Yes.
MSG network for the Knicks game or something.
Yeah.
It's more cumbersome. It takes more steps. I think you want things to be as seamless as possible for the consumer, for the fans, and they have made it more. What they've created more what you would call friction, right? There's more
Yeah.
friction. It's harder to get from point A to point B sometimes, and it's also hard to remember what channels anything is going to be on. Like I really have to go look now. Like the NBA for the first time in all the decades I've been covering it, sent out a graphic on social media that noted like Sunday through Saturday where to find NBA games every day of the week, when it's on Amazon, when it's on Peacock, when it's on NBC, but not Peacock, when it's on NBC and Peacock, when it's it's complicated now, and it's making the league a lot of money because all of these companies paid combined billions to them. So it's good for the league financially. I'm not sure it's great for the league in terms of the fan experience, and I'm not sure it's been great for the fans, but it's still early in this season. Let's see how it all unfolds. And by the way, I assume that at some point the tech companies or the folks making the TVs, the electronics companies will make it more seamless so I can do the last channel thing to go from Amazon Prime to ESPN or whatever else.
And also that TV agreement, all those billions of dollars have an impact in the league for the players. They own more money now, and they have a new CBA. A new CBA,
Yes.
it seemed like a poison pill for some of players and some of the teams. We talked here in the show months ago, years ago, that this new CBA, it seemed that some owners wanted to stop Steve Ballmer and Joe Lacob, and that was their target, and they forget a lot of things in the way. And with the aprons and all the limitations for the teams, I think that maybe the NBA culture of how to build a team is changing. And do you think that the era of the dynasties, if the Thunder want, is coming to an end? And do you think the free agency market is coming to an end, or maybe this summer was simply an adjustment?
So I'll have a different answer for each of those. I'll give you the short version and the longer version. The short version is I think people are overreacting to the free agency part of it. That will balance out over time, I believe. I'll come back to that. On the dynasties part of it and the parity part of it, the competitive balance aspect of it, you know, the second apron came into full effect 2 summers ago. So a year ago, July. The first apron had kicked in the previous CBA. But the era of parity has begun, you know, pretty much starting in 2019, if you want to go back to when we started having a different champion every year, right? So the Warriors go back to back in 2017 and 2018. The Raptors knocked them off in 2019, and we've had a different champion every year since then. So the trend was going that way from previous CBAs, even before we got to this second apron era and the new restrictions that are making it very difficult to keep a team together. So one, this is what the NBA has wanted for some time. The NBA's last lockout, last labor stoppage was in 2011. And back then, Adam Silver and David Stern, after every negotiating session, would come out and talk to the media, and they would repeat the same lines. And Adam Silver, in particular, would always say, "We want a league where 30 teams, if well managed, have a chance to compete for a championship." Adam has been saying some version of that now for 15 years. That is really what they want. And that's what they have now. I mean, really, that's what they have. And if you look at who's won the championships over the last 7-8 years, Oklahoma City, one of the smallest markets in the NBA. Milwaukee, small market city in a cold weather city where free agents don't want to go. Denver won a championship. Toronto, which is a huge market, but one that American players in particular have long been wary of because they didn't want to have to pay Canadian taxes, or they didn't want to be in a foreign country or what. Like, there's always been a weird kind of sensibility around Toronto for American born players. But we've had champions and we've had even finals teams. Like, you know, Indiana goes to the finals against Oklahoma City last year, like 2 of the smallest markets facing off in the finals. That's what the NBA wants. That's a win for Adam Silver. That is a win for the NBA, broadly speaking, because they did not want a league where it's just New York and LA, Chicago, Miami. Miami's a mid-sized market, but it's a glamour market because of the weather and the lifestyle there. They wanted a league where, as Adam Silver said so many times, all 30 teams have a chance to compete if they're well managed. And so I do think that this is what they wanted. Whether that's a good thing or not is a different argument, right? The league likes it because you want all of your franchise owners and their fan bases to believe they have a chance. And they do. The flip side of it is, gee, maybe we miss dynasties. Do we miss dynasties? Wasn't it good to have dynasties? Wasn't it fun to root either for or against the Lakers, for or against the Warriors, for or against the Bulls back in the 90s? Dynasties draw in a lot of attention because we want to see historic greatness, right? And if we hate the team, then we want to root against that. We want to see rooting for somebody to take them down, right? The Warriors became the evil empire when they got Kevin Durant, and now everybody, turned on them and wanted to see somebody knock them off. On the flip side of it, there were years there where it felt preordained that it was going to be LeBron versus Steph in the finals every year, and you felt that in October, even before the season started. And then that's what happened in June. And you thought, well, what are we doing all that? Like, what are we bothering with a season for if we know where this is going? So, you can have that argument for hours. We're not going to settle that today, but I do think that is the tension point for the NBA now is, cool. We got parity. Cool. Everybody's got a chance to compete. Is the result actually good for the league at large and for the broader fan base that, maybe they don't care about which team wins. They just want to watch something, compelling. And sometimes dynasties are very compelling, and we don't have them right now. But to your point, Oklahoma City has a chance to end this, right? They are uniquely built. They are young. They have managed their salary cap in a way where they can sustain this for a while. They've got a ton of draft picks coming. They've got all these different ways to be able to, if they have to lose talent because of the second apron, because of salary cap and luxury tax reasons and CBA reasons, and maybe we can't keep all of these players because they're getting too expensive. Cool. We've got a bunch of other younger guys behind them that we think are going to be maybe just as good, or draft picks that we can trade for another star who's maybe at a different price point. So they've got the flexibility to be a sustainable NBA power, whereas other recent NBA powers have, they rise and fall, right? Denver has not been back to the finals since winning the championship. The Milwaukee Bucks can't even get out of the first round. So we'll see. We'll see if the Thunder can defy all the recent trends and become a dynasty.
They are really scary, and we have to remember that Sam Presti was the only to vote against this new CBA that now works so well for them. Last question about this CBA: do you think this is killing the middle class? Because we are going to see players earning hundreds of millions a year. But it seems that we are going to the extremes with the franchise players earning a lot of money, but then a lot of minimum salaries in the teams.
I spoke to the Players Association over the summer about this when we were in Las Vegas for the NBA Summer League. And because Draymond Green had at that time gone on his podcast and said, the middle class is getting killed. This is a terrible CBA. And he wasn't, of course, the only one. There was a lot of that kind of discussion going on at the time because we had a very quiet free agent market this summer. A lot of guys had signed extensions before they ever got to free agency. And, there wasn't a lot of cap room. So there wasn't a great market for guys like Jonathan Kuminga or Quentin Grimes and the other, Josh Giddey. The restricted free agents had a tough time. Two things. One, the Players Association, which represents all the players, obviously, from the franchise superstars who are making hundreds of millions all the way down to the minimum salary players and the two-way guys and everything. The union, their lawyers, their brain trust feels much differently about this than I think a lot of fans do. And they've got the data to back this up. The middle class has not gotten squeezed. The middle class is doing just fine. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now to give to you and your audience, but the numbers indicate the middle class is still very healthy, doing just fine. We're not stratified between just max players and minimum guys. The trend lines are fine. I think what's really important is that to look at this in a longer span of time too. So what happens is every new CBA, especially when a CBA has extreme new measures, right? Or just new rules, new restrictions, there's always an adjustment period where the league has to kind of recalibrate, and certain bad contracts have to come off the books for teams to get back to cap room. And then the next wave, you're not going to overspend in the same way, right? So now that you're dealing with a second apron that almost functions as a hard cap, it's as close to a hard cap as the NBA has ever been. every team, all the GMs and all of their salary cap experts are going to recalibrate. And so I hate to pick on him, but like say Zach LaVine, Zach LaVine, very good player, but he's not a max player and he's got a max contract from the old system. The Zach LaVines of the NBA cannot get max contracts anymore.
Yeah.
They're going to have to settle for something under the max, but still make tens of millions a year. But it'll be like 20 million instead of 40 million, right? And so as bad contracts come off the books, as we move deeper into this second apron era and teams have recalibrated, some players are going to get squeezed, but it's not going to be all minimums. It's just going to be that if you pay your second and third tier players more what they're worth instead of just giving out maxes to everybody, then you'll have more cap room to then spend on your fourth starter, your sixth man, your 10th man. It will reach equilibrium. And this is not just me talking. I've been having a conversation like this with NBA GMs and league officials and union officials ever since this CBA went in about, hey, are you concerned? Is this what's really happening? Are we eliminating the middle class? Is that what's going to happen? Are we ever going to see multiple teams with significant cap room again? Or is it going to always be like the summer of 2025? And no, everybody feels, as I have just described, that it's just going to take a few years for the system to reach equilibrium and for them to kind of recalibrate. And I think we'll be fine. There will be a healthier free agent market. And by the way, like this past summer is not the first time we've seen this. You can go back through NBA history and find other summers where it was like, oh my God, it's the death of free agency. No teams have cap room. These guys are all screwed. It happens every so often.
Mm-hmm.
And then the system kind of recalibrates over time.
Some months ago, Seth Parnell told me that this CBA will end with the easiness of that first supermax from the rookie that maybe didn't blossom the moment the team expects. And you say, okay, I'll give you the max, and then we'll see. Maybe that will change, but we will see. We have to remember. In Spanish, Howard, the word scam is timo. And I always remember the summer of 2016 when Timo Famous Goff signed that.
Wow. Brutal. Yeah, right. And like, so that was another one of those weird moments, right? So Timofey Mozgov and Luol Deng, the Lakers gave both of them like just terrible contracts, overspent on both of them. And a lot of teams overdid it that summer, right? Like Evan Turner got a big contract, Alan Crabb. There were a bunch of these. And teams regretted them almost immediately. And the next summer, so the cap spike happens in 2016. Teams go crazy with all this extra cap room. 2017, suddenly no one's got cap room. So we do go in cycles. There are these peaks and valleys sometimes. And there are summers where there's a ton of cap room and summers where there's almost none. And that's always happened. I do think we will, as I say, reach equilibrium with this system again.
And that's why nowadays the rise of the cap is limited to, I think it's 10% from one year for another.
Yeah, so because of the cap spike in 2016, the league didn't want to have a cap spike. They wanted to spread out the new revenue coming in, and the players were still going to get all the money that they were due under the agreement. It was just going to be spread out over multiple summers instead of coming in all at once and creating the cap spike. Well, what happened because of the cap spike? Kevin Durant goes to the Warriors and creates a super team that nobody could beat. The union didn't want to go for what they called cap smoothing, and that was a mistake, I think. So in this CBA, the union did agree in advance to a system where you never have more than a 10% increase in the cap. The players, again, the players are always going to get what they are owed under the agreement, which is more or less a 50-50 split. It's just going to be phased in a way that you don't have a massive cap spike the way that we did in 2016.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk with you about real basketball. We are talking about the environment of the league, but I have to ask you first about this gambling issue, all the FBI investigation. A few years ago, the NBA, Adam Silver, signed with FanDuel, I think, and some other gambling enterprises. And now the other day also in the baseball league there was another scandal. They are limiting some types of bets. We are waiting until we see what happens with all of this in the NBA with Chauncey Billups and Damon Johnson company. Do you think this is going to affect the league, or is something residual?
I think what's been interesting, just in terms of the way the news cycle works, right? The day that came out, that was, opening week of the season. The news breaks, I think, on a Thursday morning, and it feels like the whole world's coming unglued, right? Like, oh my God, like this is just this massive scandal, and what are they going to do? How's Adam Silver going to respond? Is the NBA, going to lose credibility and standing? And is this just the tip of the iceberg? Is there going to be more? And here we are a month later, and no one's even talking about it. Like, the Trailblazers are playing pretty well with Thiago Splitters, their head coach. The Miami Heat do not miss Terry Rozier because he was barely playing anyway. Damon Jones has been out of the league for years. There's been no other shoe to drop so far, and people are still watching. People are
Mhm.
presumably still betting. And it's as if nothing has changed. It's as if this never happened. Let's not be naive. Of course, this case still has to play out. All these guys are presumably going to go on trial, and there will be more to come. And who knows what else may be unveiled in the meantime. It's a serious issue for the league. In the moment, things are just status quo, but these are scary moments for the league. It's one thing to have the cap circumvention case with the Clippers, right? Where the
Yeah.
Clippers, if they were breaking anything, they were breaking league rules, but they weren't breaking federal laws, right? Cap circumvention is a big no-no for the NBA, and the league can sanction the Clippers in all kinds of ways, but it's not the same thing as,
Mhm.
committing felonies. So these are two simultaneous scandals that are both pretty serious, and that both do, I think, go to the core of the league's integrity and can cause fans to look at the league in a different light and say, well, uh, are the results that I'm seeing, do they stand, do they stand up, or does this league have integrity? um we could spend a lot of time on the gambling thing, but I think the short version for me is, let's see where this goes. I don't know what to make of it yet. I do think that to the extent that the league is feeling, I think the league feels probably comfortable in the sense that when they decided to go down this road of pushing for legalized gambling, of making, obviously business deals with gambling companies, their feeling was that a regulated version of this that's out in the open is better than an unregulated version that was illegal and just, in the shadows, right?
Mhm.
And they felt that the you know the companies themselves, DraftKings, FanDuel, the sports books in Vegas, whatever, they will catch irregularities, which is how you got here. They caught the irregularities, and so the league is going to say, this is the way the system's supposed to work. We don't expect there to never be any kind of attempts to benefit from the system and to trade illegal inside information. And that's the thing. At least to this point, anyway, there's nothing in the federal indictments that indicates that anybody was throwing games, that the outcomes themselves are tainted. There
Mhm.
was inside information being traded, and Chauncey hasn't even been charged for inside information, even though he was named or not named. He was identified but not named in the other case. Chauncey's thing was an illegal poker ring, which has nothing to do
Mhm.
with the NBA on its face. You don't want your coaches or players, in bed with gamblers and then have them compromised and then put them in a position where they might taint NBA games. But the poker ring is a different thing. So it's complicated. And I think, at least for the moment, I think the NBA is feeling, I don't know I don't know how to say or describe what they're feeling. I think this could have been much more serious and may still
Yeah.
become much more serious. I think the Tim Donaghy case, the referee case from back in
Yeah.
2007, was a much bigger deal than what we've seen so far in this case.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that the league was really scared when all this happened, and now it seems that is under the carpet and waiting until the next summer or something
Well,
happens, and
but I
will
mean,
carry on.
the federal, I mean, the federal cases have to play out, right? Like these, like we have to just see what the next stages are. There's nothing for the NBA to do other than cooperate with
Mhm.
the authorities and see how these cases play out.
Mhm. I want to talk about basketball, and we also we just extend the time we talk.
Sure.
So when you have to end,
We're good.
just
Let's
let
like
me.
another, yeah, like 10 minutes is good.
Okay, so let's talk about basketball, and I'm going to make two questions together that are more than 10 minutes. So you have to adjust
Mm.
because I want to talk about the new generation. We talk about LeBron James and Steph and all that finals. They are going towards the end of their careers,
Yeah.
and there is no young stars that take that torch that say, This is my team, I'm going to let my team win." And also we have to talk about, for me, the best basketball player of the world, Nikola Jokic. I have no words for him. Do you have any?
All of the possible words have been used, so I don't think there are any left. The face of the league thing, or who carries the torch, is interesting. Because this is very much a modern kind of invention, modern-ish anyway. I think we all got, for those of us who are old enough to have watched Michael Jordan back in the 90s, I think we got kind of spoiled in a way that Michael Jordan dominated that decade in such a way and was so charismatic. He was so compelling. He was so much fun to watch, but also to listen to and to see his commercials. And he'd go on Saturday Night Live, and he was in Space Jam, of course.
But
Michael
also,
Jordan,
sorry,
yeah,
sorry, Howard. Also, we tend to forget that it wasn't immediate. Jordan
yeah,
came to the league in '84,
yeah.
and he started winning in '91.
Yes, it took a while. It usually
Yeah,
takes a while.
yeah.
We're always in a hurry. So but he became the face of the league. I don't think we ever like in the 80s, Magic and Bird were the face of the league, and then Michael arrives, and then there's kind of a torch passing there, right? But that the same thing didn't happen before that. We did there was no like I don't think in real time, if you were to go back and look, you probably wouldn't even find the phrase face of the league or passing the torch in newspaper accounts back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s as it went from Bill Russell, presumably to, Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain to Kareem to Magic and Bird, and then, Jordan, Kobe and Shaq, Steph, LeBron. Like we talk about this now in the last 10, 20, 25 years, but I don't think that was not a thing for most of the NBA's existence. But we live in much more of an age of mass media and social media and just the immediacy, and just a lot more discussion, just more conversation and more debate.
But
And yeah,
sorry, Howard. I'm not meaning one player on one face of the league. I'm talking about all the young players. I think in
sure.
the last 5 or 6 drafts, all the Zions, the Morants,
Yeah.
that players that uh, came to the league with a lot of hype. I think Lamelo Ball, and they are not even able to be in court.
They're not able to stay on the court, and they're not able to win at a high level. When we talk about either a face of the league or, as you note, a whole generation of faces of the league, like who's carrying the league forward, they need to be exciting players. They need to play a lot, and they need to win in the playoffs. And they need to show greatness at a really high level, right? Um, but we didn't know, like LeBron had like face of the league stamped on him before he ever even stepped into the NBA. Steph Curry,
Mhm.
we didn't see that coming at all.
No,
So sometimes it's
the
the guys you
Wolves
can't.
didn't. The Wolves
But
didn't.
we didn't. We certainly, the Wolves certainly didn't. But Nikola Jokic was drafted in the second round, and he's the greatest player in the world right now. And we didn't see that coming. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was drafted, 12th or 13th? We didn't see that coming. There's a lot you don't see coming. The face of the league thing is difficult because it's more than just winning. And yes, we've had a lot of guys flame out. So Zion and Ja Morant, it looks like, may never get on track. They may never fulfill the promise that we thought that they would. LaMelo Ball, as you mentioned, similar thing. There's always been, disappointments in the draft at the top of the draft. And so that goes in cycles and things happen. And but the league is still stocked with a lot of great young talent. Wembanyama is obviously an incredible player, an electric player, and importantly, very charismatic, right? He's certainly fun to watch, but also off the court, he's really thoughtful and great in front of the cameras. And that matters too. You can't be face of the league. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an incredible player, but face of the league is hard for a guy like him or for Jokic or for Doncic because they don't do much in the way of media. It feels like we know almost nothing about them. They don't like doing it. They don't like doing interviews. They don't like sitting for feature stories. They are not very giving of themselves off of the court. And as a result, I think it's hard for them to be face of the league. I don't even think there's this dumb conversation in the US where it's like, oh, can an international player be face of the league? Of course they can.
Yeah.
But but it's not about whether Jokic or Doncic were born somewhere else or Shai, and Shai was born in Canada. It's not like that's he's from North America. This is not most NBA fans probably don't even realize that Shai is Canadian, with all due respect to Canada. So it's not a cultural thing and it's not a language thing. It's do you embrace being face of the league? Because being face of the league is not just being one of the best players and winning a lot of games and hopefully winning championships. It's also being willing to do all the other stuff that comes with it, to be an ambassador for the league, to do in-depth features that journalists want to do. I know this sounds like I'm saying this out of self-interest, and there's a little bit of that, but if the fans don't know you, and if you do not want to be known, and Jokic does not want to be known, it makes it very difficult.
Howard, I always remember when they handled the MVP of the finals to Jokic, he almost forgave it there, and he was thinking, I want to go party and then go on holidays.
And go home and hang out with my horses. Yeah. So Steph Curry and LeBron James and Kevin Durant, who have been kind of the co-ambassadors of the NBA for the last 15 years, they all, we know them pretty well, right? They've done a gazillion interviews. Steph, to this day, he doesn't have to do any of this stuff, but he still does it because he understands it's part of the responsibility of being a superstar in this league. And Michael Jordan did a ton of interviews back in his time, and Shaq and Kobe did. It's part of the responsibility of being the torchbearer. And I think this generation, a lot of them just don't want to do it. And I think that is a challenge for the league.
And also, don't you think that the people that follows the league, we are in a kind of fast food culture, that we are thinking more in the possibility, the hype of the new players coming, instead of the guys that are really ruling the league. I'm thinking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's in such a great level, not only this year but the last year, and many of people only talk about the free throws. I'm thinking about Jason Tatum, that it seems that he's never enough, and we spent hours talking in podcasts. We spent a lot of space in the news talking about players in the first, second, third year, if they rise or not rise. Do you think that it's a little bit of that also?
There's probably some of that. There's a lot of short attention span and some impatience and a lot of other things. Jason Tatum's an interesting case because he's won a championship. He's been an MVP candidate. He's usually lower on the ballot, but he's been, in the MVP discussion for several years running. He's obviously out for this season because of the torn Achilles. But Tatum, he's a pretty reserved guy. So again, you need to have a certain, charisma and I don't mean just like charisma, like good looks. Like you have a personality that people connect with, right? And he's very reserved. we have a lot of superstars right now who are very dry. And so that's difficult. But listen, there's always somebody's always going to pop, right? Like maybe it's Anthony Edwards. Eventually, they got to win at a little higher level. Maybe it's somebody that's not even on our radars yet. Maybe it's one of the guys who's going to be drafted in June, because there's a really exciting draft class coming with a bunch of guys who could all be superstars in the NBA, according to the draft experts. So yeah, it'll kind of work its way out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Howard. It took longer that we talked. Thank you very much for that. Gracias a todos los que nos escucháis. En unos días tendréis la entrevista traducida y doblada y colgada. De momento aquí la tenéis en inglés. Y muchísimas gracias. Volvemos mañana con Desayuno y Ando. Un saludo.